Minister, I'm pleased to be able to come in here today, and I'm talking about the bill. It's an important bill, but it does cover the whole running of this House, and there's two things I'd like to address. The first thing is that when you do examine the pay scales of the secretarial assistants going from 24,223 to 46,888, and when you compare particularly at the low end, the difference between them and our parliamentary assistants, it's something like 16,500 of a difference at the bottom of the scale. And after 18 years, you do close the gap, but it's a long way, and it's a very long time to have served as a secretarial assistant, to be there 18 years, because as you know, this is precarious employment, because a lot of secretarial assistants only last in the job as long as we last, and the turnover of this House, as you've seen in recent elections, is quite dramatic. I would make a general point. I have believed that the gap between low paid in the public service and the top paid has widened and widened in real terms since the 60s, and that has been retrograde in society. Now, I think it's also important to look at the work of our secretarial assistants, because it's not the same as somebody working in a big office as a clerical officer, because our secretarial assistants have unique features. They're doing a public-facing job. They have a huge work burden. They have to multitask and know about many, many schemes all at one time, whatever is in the public domain at any one time. When they're working in the constituency office and we're up here, they're virtually working on their own self-initiative. They can't be ringing you about everything. And I think if you did an actual job analysis of what they do, you would find that they are atypical workers with a very, very unusual work conditions. And as I said, their work is quite precarious, because it's only as good as long as the people that are elected last. And I believe that that issue needs to be addressed, and addressed urgently. I'm not sure how the mechanisms work. I do know in the ultimate you have to provide the money. And that's where you come in, and to make a clear signal that if money is awarded, that it will be there and paid. But I think we, as a collective Oireachtas, have to look at this issue of people like this, who are so crucial to the operation of democracy in this country. Now, the second issue I'd like to address, and nobody has addressed it yet here, is the bigger, well, not the bigger question, but the parallel question as to whether we are resourcing ourselves properly to do the work that the public want us to do, and whether we actually respect democracy enough to believe that it is vital, that our work is vital, and that we have to be resourced to do it properly. Now, they were talking about 1998 and years like that. I first came into this House as a senator in 1989, and yes, we had one secretary as a senator in those days between three senators, or one secretary between three senators. But the world was so different. There were no emails, everything came by post, so everyone had to do the onerous task of writing to you or typing to you. There were virtually no mobile phones. There was the odd brick phone, but your constituents didn't have them in their pockets. They didn't expect instant contact. There was very little media to be done in those days. The procedures of this House were totally different. The amount of paperwork coming, the complications of all the consultations that go on, the amount of research we have to do, it was all totally different. They're literally worlds apart. People talk about the change between 1920 and 1950, but the changes since 1989 and that 30 years have been just as dramatic when you analyse them. And I think we have to go with that so that we can do justice to the job. We didn't have pre-legislative scrutiny. We didn't have all the committees that we all spend so much time in, preparing reports, doing detailed work, etc. Now, it amuses me at times what the public think we have and what we have, because I've often had people contact me and say, could you ask one of your staff, to look at the diary and come back to me? And the staff that does the diary in my place, because my staff are so crazy busy, is myself. But if you don't do it, then they have to do it. But if they're doing that, they can't be doing something else for you, and it just depends on how you divide the labour. But the reality is, we have 2 staff. They're entitled to holidays, they're entitled to breaks. They sometimes get sick and so on. So, the idea of asking your staff is if you had a whole bevy of staff there, and you had one for the diary and one for the constituency work of one type and one preparing it for the Parliament. It's not that way, and we all know it's not that way. But we're shy, we're afraid, because the media mightn't like it, or certain sections of the media who purposely don't want to understand the importance of democracy. I think we have to be fearless. I think we have to do something about this. It always reminds me of many years ago, a lady rang my constituency office and she was complaining that, I was getting paid effectively to get re-elected. In other words, that the people working in my constituency office were helping me to be re-elected. I noticed the number was a Dublin number because in those days people rang on landline. So I rang her back and she was giving out about the constituency office, and I said, by the way, you rang my constituency office? And she said, yes. And I said, you did expect the phone to be answered even though you weren't in my constituency? And she said, yes. And then she suddenly realised that she'd put her 2 feet in it, she started laughing. And I said, she wasn't the only one, because people ring you from all over the country. And we do, all of us, collectively owe to all of our constituents, which covers all the people of the state. We do owe to all of those that we provide a good service. My belief is that the ordinary plain people of Ireland want us resourced to do the job, and what I'm suggesting is, yes, for those particularly who engage in committees and put a lot of time and effort into committees in this House, which is very, very time consuming, we should be given more support staff. And I'm saying that, and I know I'll be criticised by people who want to not understand the workload that is not only on us, but on our staff. So, Minister, I do think we all, collectively, and with no petty politics in this, need to make a stand for democracy in this House and do it fearlessly.